our
No, we're gonna get all over it.
That's right. All right, guys. On Fridays we do a
Ooh, oh
PC2.
man, I almost hit a deer.
On Fridays we do a little PC2 session at 8 o'clock, and typically there's some good energy carried over for the first couple minutes. So we were talking a little bit about building community Facebook pages. We were talking about just a bit about kind of what approach do you take when somebody gets a listing that you either feel like you should have gotten or that you wish you would have gotten yet you didn't necessarily earn, right? And we were just kind of looking at mindset around that, right? And kind of the general summary of that statement or the conversation is that we don't get listings, right? We don't get anything. We earn it, right? So if somebody lists with somebody else, it's because you didn't earn the business, right? So it's not like a judgment on like whether you're a good agent or something. They probably didn't even know you were an agent. You see what I'm saying? So there's tons of opportunity out there. Tons of opportunity. Candace, a lot of background noise. Tell Dustin to quiet down.
Here, I'll mute.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
Good morning. Good morning.
Beautiful.
Good morning.
Beautiful, beautiful. So today's topic, what I had in mind is just kind of a little bit more of a open forum around contracts. There is one contract in particular that I could spend some time on, or I could do whatever you want, really. But I was going to spend a few minutes on the purchase and sale agreement if you guys wanted me to do that. But tell me a little bit about. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about contracts. Are you guys, is there any parts of the contract that you, in particular, that you want me to review or kind of talk strategy around or clarify or, what are you struggling with right now? I just want to kind of open the floor a little bit for Q&A or, talk about case studies or whatever you want to talk about. Anything in particular?
Hey, Bill, for me, it would be like the special steps and like, because I'm like the actual contract, like I'm good. The contingency, I'm good. Like I understand all that stuff. But I would say special steps for me, when to use them. Is there such a thing as too many, too little, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. That's actually, that's perfect. Let's start with that. So one of the things that I don't see it too often anymore, but I used to see this a lot, which was agents would like litter their contracts with like every little thing that's burned them in the past. Right. And that, quite frankly, especially in this market, it's just not going to be successful. Right. People are looking for as clean of a contract as they can get. Now, when I say clean, what I'm talking about is just simple and easy to understand and not asking for a bunch of silly stuff, particularly because the buyers essentially have virtually no power right now, right? If you submit an offer and it's like, hey, the seller will install what's up? The seller will install a termite system and they'll pump the septic tank and they'll re-roof the house and we need a new water heater and like all this kind of crap. They're going to be like, we don't want to deal with these people, right? So it is a fine line of protecting your person and asking for the things that are necessary. Now let's go back to like 3 or 4 years ago, and I'll tell you what some of the most common stipulations are, and then I'll tell you how to navigate that in today's environment based on the fact that some of that stuff is a little more challenging to get accepted. Okay, so. Candace, help me out with this, and Heather, if I'm missing anything in particular. These are probably the most common special stipulations. By the way, and I'll make a note to post this a little bit later. There is a Google Drive file that has just a bunch of the most common special stipulations and the appropriate wording for it, or one version of wording for it. Okay, so the most popular special stipulations, I would say, or most common special stipulations are making sure that if the home is in a community with an HOA or rules and regulations, like, condo complex, townhome complex, many neighborhoods with, a good indication oftentimes is that there's like kind of a pretty sign in the front, right? That's generally an indication that somebody's got to cut the grass, right? And somebody's going to plant the flowers, and somebody's going to make sure that, they don't fly a crazy flag in the front yard or paint their home purple or something, right? So there's generally some form of rules, and almost certainly if they have a swimming pool or tennis courts or something like that, there's going to be an HOA. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is let's determine, does the home have an HOA? And then you want to ask for the HOA covenants, bylaws, rules and regulations, any amendments or updates to those documents. Remember that if you are buying or if the buyer's buying a home that is in a condo or townhome community, one of the very important questions you need to discover is there a rental policy? Meaning, do they allow rentals? And if so, how many do they allow? And is that capped? We see this most often in condo communities, and they cap it at usually between 20 and 25%. So what that means is that at any one time, only 20 to 25% of those homeowners can rent their home at that time. Okay, which
One more
means,
thing.
yeah.
I was just going to say, and in addition to the covenants and restrictions, I also like to ask for the budget. And I also like to ask for minutes from the past 3 meetings if they have meetings. Because it gives you a heads up if there's anything being discussed, like, oh, we're going to add street lights down the line, which could be an assessment. And also the budget to make sure they have plenty of money in reserves so that people aren't going to be assessed to keep the HOA going.
My only, I totally agree, but I would probably leave those two out of the contract, especially in this environment. And the only reason why I say that is because, like, if I get an offer that's like, give me the minutes from the last HOA meeting, I'm like, I'm going to take some other offer where I don't have to do that.
No, you're right. And that's due
So
diligence. Actually.
Get it approved, get the deal under contract, then you can go and ask for all that stuff. Right. But I think it's appropriate to ask for the basics up front. In fact, oftentimes they even have it in the MLS docs and stuff. Okay, so that's going to basically say, what are the rental policies? Is there any restriction on, a long time ago, they used to have things like, certain age people can't live here and certain races can't live here. We're past that now. But, you want to make sure that you're reading those documents thoroughly. You too, not just the buyer. You should be reading that stuff too. Okay. Rental cap, just so everyone is clear on this, is basically once that number of homes are rented, then the homeowners do no longer a new homeowner, or let me rephrase that, a homeowner without rental permission does not have the ability to rent until a slot opens up, right? So there might be a wait list or something like that, right? So you want to ask, is there a wait list? How many people are on it? How long does that generally take to open up? Right. So if an investor comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy some rental condos or whatever, that's a red flag that most likely that person doesn't know what they're talking about. And you're going to have to do a little research to see if that community would allow rentals in the first place. And not to get too in the weeds with this, but there's also communities where the rental permission transfers with the sale. And there's also communities where the rental is the opposite. So for example, I have a condo in Sandy Springs that my wife and I own, and we're currently renting it out. We're actually going to be selling it in a couple of months if anyone's interested. But I got somebody reached out to me yesterday, as a matter of fact, and said, hey, you want a cash offer? I said, yeah, sure. Give me a cash offer. I'll take it. I'll see what you want. Right. And they said, well, can I rent it? And I said, I don't know. You got to do that research. Right. But the way that our community works is that I have rental permission, but when I sell it, the new person does not automatically have rental permission, right? And there's some communities that go the opposite way, so you got to dig into that a bit. All
Bill,
that again.
Is there, like, did you have to undergo some sort of process to be able to have that, or
To get rental permission?
yes?
Yes, I applied to be on a wait list about 13 years ago, and I sat on that wait list for about 3 years before
Okay.
I was given permission.
Okay, so in some communities, you kind of have to like apply for, if you will.
I mean, there's really not an
Or your community, you're saying, is just like it kind of goes away. So you have to like start the process all over. So
it's
if there's
the
room, he'd be able to, but if there's not room, he'd have to join a wait list.
Yes. So in my community, a good way to phrase it would be the rental permission transferred or is held by the individual rather than the unit, right? So unit 2003, or let me rephrase that. Bill Linkwald, who owns unit 2003, has rental permission. The second Bill Linkwald doesn't own 2003 anymore. 2003 doesn't have rental permission, and whoever owns it, if they want it, needs to apply for it separately. But in other communities, they would say it's independent of the owner, and unit 2003 has rental permission no matter who happens to own it. Okay, so I know we're in the weeds a little bit, but these are important concepts to understand if you're going to be working with investors or condos and townhomes and these kind of things. Okay, so special stipulation number 1 that I think is most common is asking for those documents. Okay, special stipulation another one is pretty common, or used to be kind of common, is the seller shall agree to buy a 1 year's home warranty for the purchaser starting on the day of 1 year from the day of closing, and at a cost not to exceed $600 or whatever. Okay, you'd want to make sure that obviously the home warranty that your buyer would want to buy is covers that cost, or at least they're aware. Let's say it's a $600 warranty, but the seller only agrees to pay 500 of it. You don't want that to be a surprise for the buyer, so you just say, hey, here's the warranty. Here's the warranty company that I like working with and I have a relationship with. Here's all their different products or whatever and add-ons. How much money do you want to ask for, right? And if you ask for, let's say, $620, and the buyer or seller comes back and says, hey, we'll give you 400, and the buyer still wants that warranty, they're going to have to come out of pocket for some, and they just need to be comfortable with that.
And Bill, I usually add on to that stipulation that it is going to be from a company of the buyer's choosing.
Yes.
Just to clear it, because if a listing agent is going to purchase that, let's just say they do for whatever reason, they're not going to get you the highest package with all of the bells and whistles.
That's exactly
So
right.
I think,
Thank you for adding that. So seller to purchase a 1 year home warranty for the buyer to begin on the date of closing, to be at a cost not to exceed blank, ordered by the selling agent, or now more commonly known as the buyer's agent. Great point. Thank you. Another one that I see fairly frequently is something about termites. Right, there's a common set of language that essentially says, like, if termites are identified, then the seller kind of pre-agrees to install a defense system and basically make sure that that any damage that was caused has been remediated. The trouble with that nowadays is you're asking the seller to take on the burden of whether the home has termites. That's probably not all that strategic right now. What I would say is leave that off right now, and instead have the buyer get a termite inspection during the due diligence period. And if there is a problem to be found, then you could potentially ask for it to be dealt with. But to ask the seller to deal with it on the front end when there may not even be a problem, that may be the thing that separates you from the next best offer. Donna?
Would you say the same thing about the home warranty?
Yeah, absolutely.
Waiting until due diligence?
I
to request that?
wouldn't even probably bother with it, to be honest. If your buyer wants a home warranty, they can buy it on their own. If they buy it within 30 days of closing, or on the day of closing, or within 30 days of closing, you will generally get a bit of a price discount. If you buy a home warranty after that, you're probably going to pay more like what they might call full price. Okay. Absolutely. You don't litter the contracts with a bunch of asks right now, guys. People are like, they're giving away, they're putting 10 grand of earnest money. They're not asking for an appraisal contingency, or sometimes even a due diligence period or a financing contingency. If your buyer wants a home warranty, they need to buy it themselves. And by the way, they should have been told a month before that that's not likely something that the seller is going to agree to. So if your friend got a home warranty and used it and has told you how important a home warranty is, hopefully you've been saving enough money to purchase it on your own. Okay. Another thing that you could possibly see on the special stipulations would be something to the effect of, seller to furnish all disclosure statements within 3 days of binding agreement date. So for example, if they don't have it posted online, or you have requested it, yet the seller is probably clobbered because they got 80 people looking at the home and 15 offers, and they haven't sent it to you, but you don't want to lose out on the deadline or something, then you can put it in there. And let's say you get it in 3 days, and that's during due diligence, and something is revealed in there that you have a problem with, you can back out. The caveat to that is if you're going to waive due diligence or ask for a right to request repairs instead of due diligence, that you may not want to take that risk, because then you have less contractual ability to leave without penalty. Y'all follow that part? All right, what am I missing? I feel like I might be missing a few things. Candace, can you think of any other special stipulations that are pretty common, or Heather, or anyone? I'm going to pull up the sheet to see.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you are going to use special stipulations, typically that would be after, like Bill said, after you've had your inspection, during due diligence, when you're negotiating things. There's a list of special stipulations that have been pre-written that are in GAR forms. You can just type in special stipulations when you go into command and add, and they're written by attorneys, so the wording is spot on, and we don't have to recreate it in a lot of cases.
Yep. Oh, here's another one. All parties acknowledge and agree that times not otherwise specified in this agreement shall end at 7 p.m. on the date of expiration. So what that would say, for example, is, let's just assume for a second you did not put that in there. Then all of the time periods end at 11:59 prior to midnight, right? So that potentially could put you in a situation where you are, basically up all night waiting for some type of news or update or response or something like that. So if you wanted to, let's say, prevent that from happening and know whether this deal is going to happen or not, or navigate all the back and forth, and you don't want to do that as midnight approaches, then you could put a different deadline and specify that. Let's see.
Bill, I was gonna, what about appraisal gaps?
Yeah, great point. So that's another one. There's some language in here of let's see.
And just what Bill was saying, you can also say that, for instance, if you know that you've got like Thanksgiving coming up and people are going to be off work on, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you could say in your special steps that all parties acknowledge and agree that the days from due diligence, all the deadlines run on business days only and not holidays and weekends. You can do that as well.
Yep. Remember, everything that you add to the contract, though, as an offer, is something that the seller, essentially the seller is going to be evaluating more than likely.
Yes.
Your offer next to this one, next to this one, next to this one, next to this one. And what they're looking for is not only thoroughness and complete and accurate paperwork to help the seller and their agents determine who their co-op is going to be, basically, and how kind of organized, so to speak, the other side is. But any of this stuff could be what differentiates you from the other offer, both in a positive way or a negative way. Right.
Yeah,
So,
I think your initial offer should be as clean as possible. And
Yeah.
if you have a due diligence period, that's where you tackle some of these if absolutely necessary.
that's right.
In this market.
Exactly. Greta had a situation the other day where she called the other agent. She was a buyer's agent. She called the listing agent and asked the question that I've suggested to you guys to ask, which is, hey, tell me a little bit about the ideal contract. What is most important to you and your prospect, or you and your seller? And she was told that they wanted to keep like one of their classic cars or whatever on the property for like 6 months, right? And that it was some other little thing, right? And so that was important to the seller. So she added it in special stipulations, right? Purchaser is willing to grant permission to the current seller to keep their classic car on the property, for 6 months, no charge, right? So if you can identify something from the other side that's relevant to them, then you can, and you're comfortable with it, then you can add that into the language of the stipulations. Another, so on the appraisal gap, here's an example of phrasing for that. It says all parties agree that if lender appraisal comes in lower than the negotiated sales price, buyer agrees to bring up to $35,000 in additional funds for closing. Okay, so that, let's make sure everyone understands that. Home is under contract, let's say for 400,000. Appraisal comes in at 380. Okay, now let's talk about financing for a second. Let's say it's a 20% down payment transaction or loan. So prior to the appraisal coming in, the borrower, the buyer, was going to put down 20%, which is what, $80,000, and then was going to get a loan for $320,000. Right? You follow me? Now the appraisal is coming at 380, so we have an issue. So now the buyer goes back to the seller and says, hey, got this low appraisal. I still want to buy the home, but I can't pay over 380. So would you like to lower the price? They say yes. Now what's going on is you're now buying the home for 380. So you're going to put down 20% of 380. The bank will give you the other 80%. Follow? If they say no, and they say you're buying it at 400, that's it, then you have the opportunity to say, assuming this language was not in the contract, and you had a appraisal contingency that protected you in this amount of time, then you could leave the deal without penalty. Or you could say, well, gosh, the bank thinks it's only worth 380, so now I put down 20% of 380. 20% of 380. The bank gives me the other 80% of 380, and then because I've agreed to pay the seller 400, I have to bring the entire other part. In this scenario, you would have to do that, because you're basically saying, I don't really care about the appraisal. I'm going to make up the difference up to this amount. And what that does is it prevents the seller from worrying about the appraisal to some degree. And that's particularly relevant when homes are selling significantly, oftentimes above list price. Heather, what were you going to add?
Well, I was going to say that also, like if my buyers are offering over, let's just say they're already offering over 40,000, right? List price. When I write a stipulation and I say, buyers agree, whatever, fancy language, cover the appraisal gap up to $40,000, not to exceed original offer price. You know what I'm saying? This way that it doesn't, they're not like, oh, well, they offered, 40,000 above, and now they're going to give me another 40,000 on top of that.
How is that different than what I was said? Am I missing something?
I'm not sure it's different. I'm just saying, like, I maybe word it a little differently. I'm not saying it's different. I think it's exactly the same, except that it's just worded really, really clearly right there in the stipulation.
Oh, so rather than saying 30,000, you actually identify what that number is?
I identify the number and say we're not going to exceed that based off of an appraisal gap. Meaning if they're like, oh, they already offered 640. Let me think about my wording here. I have to think about this. So I had clients who offered, the house was 625, they offered 675, and they were worried about an appraisal gap, which whatever, they ended up getting the appraisal waived, so it didn't matter, and they paid 675.
Right.
But they were, okay, here's where it is. They were afraid that the house would have appraised for more than they're already $50,000 above asking.
That doesn't change anything.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's explain what Heather just suggested.
Yeah.
Which is Let's go the opposite way. Home is under contract for $400,000. Doesn't make a difference what it was listed for. It's under contract for $400,000. Appraisal comes in at $425,000. Okay. Let me make sure everyone's clear on how this operates. The appraiser is hired to protect the bank or the lender. Okay. The buyer, the borrower, is the one paying for it. But it is essential. Think of it as when you and your buyer's agent are studying the data, studying the comparables and the recent sales and the activity and the pendings and all that. That's your version of research, right? To substantiate what you think the price is worth or the home is worth, right? Now, keep in mind, in many scenarios, the buyer might be putting down 5%, 10%, 20%. The bank is being asked to put 4, 5, 10 times as much money down. So isn't it appropriate that they do a little research too? That's what the appraisal is, basically. You could think about it like that. So if the appraisal comes in low, then they say, hey, we don't have enough LTV here. We don't have enough loan to value to be willing to take on this risk. Because if you were to buy the home and never make a payment, we can't sell it for 400. We have to sell it for 380, right? Because that's what we think it's worth. That's the whole point of the appraisal. Now, if the appraisal comes in at list price or not list price, contract sales price, or above that, that is, again, for the benefit of the borrower. So the lender will say, hey, the appraisal came in, guess what? 425, isn't that awesome? And you say, great, that's awesome. Now, you do not, as the buyer's agent, go and call the listing agent and say, hey, guess what? The home appraised for 425. Want to see the appraisal? God forbid they say yes and you send it, and they send it to their seller who freaks out the fact that they sold a $425,000 home for 400. And then they definitely won't be fixing your backward electrical outlets. You see what I'm saying? So if the appraisal comes in at contract sales price or beyond it or above it, then all you do on the buyer side is you call the other side, the listing agent, and say, hey, appraisal's good. Moving on. Appraisal satisfactory. We won't be asking for any reduction, or there's no complications here. We're moving forward. And because most people are curious, the listing agent will probably say, what did it appraise for? And you will say, I'm not able to share that with you. All we know is that it's good. And they say, well, come on. Why don't you just tell me? You say, I'm sorry. My buyer hasn't not given me permission to share that. All you need to know is that it's good. Because if it's higher than the contract sales price, there's no good that can come from sharing that with the other side. They're just going to be pissed. Y'all follow what I'm saying? Now, also, even though it appraised for higher, that has nothing to do with the contract sales price. So now your buyer isn't obligated to pay more or anything like that. Okay. Now it does give the buyer a lot of, they really like when that happens, because then they kind of think that they're getting some instant equity. That may or may not be true. It's hard to say, especially in this environment. But they're going to be really happy with you. Okay. So that's the way to address that issue, or that's to go into a little bit more detail about what Heather says. Does everyone understand kind of how that mechanically works? Okay, cool. There's also a couple of stipulations that Andy's team puts in the buyer brokerage agreement, which I never actually did, but I think this is really smart. And I'll post this as well. But those stipulations read as follows. It says the Peters Company, working as an agent for the selling broker, encourages all buyers to have general radon, sewer scope or septic inspection, pool inspection if applicable, and termite inspections on all property. The Peters Company, working as an agent for the selling broker, encourages all buyers to obtain a survey for all property. Peters Company, working as an agent for the selling broker, encourages all buyers to obtain an enhanced title insurance for all property. Peters Company, working as a agent for the selling broker, does not control the lending environment and cannot take responsibility for any delays associated with a particular lender. That's a real good one if they're going with Bank of America or SunTrust or Truist or whatever it's called now, or Loan Depot or one of these places. right? If I'm working with Kathy, I'm not all that concerned. If I'm working with some schmo with a 7-digit extension number in Seattle who never answers his phone, I'm scared to death. Make sense? And then buyer acknowledges that that actually is slightly different wording for the same thing. So those are things, those are stipulations that you might consider putting in the buyer brokerage agreement. And that kind of lessens the possibility that they could say, hey, you didn't tell me to get a survey. Hey, you didn't tell me to buy a title insurance. Hey, you didn't tell me I needed to check for radon. Say, oh yeah, you remember when I told you when we were walking up and down those stairs in the home? That's not going to go over very well. Right, so it's good to have it in writing. That could also be part of like a handout that you give to a buyer during the buyer consultation. Right, you know, here's some frequently asked questions. Here's some recommendations from me as your real estate agent. You know, that could be get an inspection, get title insurance. You know, get a survey. These kind of things. You could also say something to the effect of. You could even have them initial. Say, hey, I have acknowledged receipt of this. Make sense?
I also put that in the email after their offer's been accepted, and I send them like that congratulatory email.
Very smart.
I also put that reminder in there.
Very smart. Very smart. Okay, any other steps that I have not gone over?
Well, in my listing, I accepted an offer that had an escalation clause in it.
Oh yeah, escalation clause. That good. Thank you for bringing that up. That's another one that should be in there. Wording for an escalation clause would sound something like buyer. All parties agree that buyer shall pay $2,000 more than the seller's highest net offer if multiple offers exist. Up to a price of such and such, or you could even leave off the up to a price part. And the seller agrees to share page 1 of that of the offer, which triggers the escalation clause. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, it's kind of like the Price is Right, right? It's like, I think it's 300. Well, I think it's 301, right? And then the guy that said 300 is not winning. Same kind of idea. Anything else?
If they do not have a seller's property disclosure uploaded in the listing, is that something that we should ask for? Because they're required to disclose any latent defects. And, you know, we see a lot of listings that have investor owned, no disclosures available. But I've heard from another broker that if they've made any kind of repairs or revisions, anything to the property, that they should disclose that. So should we ask for that, the seller's property disclosure, or the other form, the disclosure of latent defects or whatever it is, in the offer, or no?
I mean, you could. Zillow is not going to fill that out though, and Open Door is not going to fill that out, and Mark Spain's not going to fill that out. So I don't know if I'd like push them too hard on the latent, you know, disclosure thing, but you could put in there, you know, to complete all disclosures, or seller's property disclosure, HOA disclosure, or community association disclosure, lead-based paint disclosure. Just see what happens. I mean, sometimes you're not going to get it. And by the way, I don't mean to sound cynical about this, but it's not designed really to inform the buyer. It's designed to protect the seller. So what I mean by
Well,
that.
and also the seller's disclosure is not mandatory, right? It's optional.
I guess the form
Yes.
is optional.
It is optional. They are supposed to fill out either the latent disc or the either the seller's property disclosure or the new one that just came out, which is called like the disclosure of latent defects, I think is what it's called. However, it's kind of like, look, do you want the house or not? Like, I don't care if it's required. I'm not going to do it. So if you want to buy my home, then I'm making the rules. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see them like, you know, there's a law that says you're not supposed to drive over a certain speed, but have all of us broken that law today? Probably, yeah. You see what I'm saying? So Candace,
What about the,
are you shaking your head at me?
I always drive the speed limit. I don't like to get pulled over. It just freaks me out.
Well, that's why they make people different. I don't usually abide by that policy.
what
Okay.
about
So
termite
just-
report?
I also just want to say, Donna, keep talking. Look at Donna's visual pipeline. I just keep noticing this over here to my left.
Yes. It
I
is
just
supposed
wanna-
be
I
in
just wanna
front
shout
of
out
her,
that.
though. Oh my gosh, I love that. Donna, you made a big decision recently. Do you want to share that with the group?
I mean, my decision to invest in going to both.
Oh my gosh, you were just saying it perfectly. Yes. Why did you decide to do that? Outside of your coach applying a significant amount of pressure.
It's important. It's important because my business, I need to continue to move forward to grow my business. And I think Bold helps to do that.
Beautifully. Nice and simply said. That's exactly right. We don't need to complicate it anymore. When people go to Bold, they learn, they grow, they make more money. It's that simple. Cool. Any other stipulations that I have not addressed?
The termite report, do we ask for that for FHA or VA? One of those?
No. First of all, FHA does not require it. VA does require it. But if you ask for it, remember you're asking for them to make a purchase or an investment, right? So you're asking the seller to pay $50. I wouldn't do that in this type of environment. You can get it, you can buy it yourself, right? You can
get it for free too.
Some companies will give it to you for free, but some do not. So it's not free for everyone, or it's not every company does not offer it for free.
But I think there's somebody on our office vendor list that does it for free because I had him do it for one of my buyers.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when they come to the sales meeting at the same time and one's like, one of our biggest benefits is we offer termite letters for free. And the next guy says, well, the reason why we choose not to offer termite letters for free is this. And it's kind of like this, it's a little funny exchange. I don't know to be honest, which one is free. But yes, a VA, just so everyone's clear on this, VA requires a termite letter in order to fund the loan. It does, by the way, have to be dated within 30 days of closing. So for example, depending on how everything times out, let's say you get a termite test or termite inspection during due diligence, yet the home is not going to close for another 35 days, you're going to need to get another one, right? So it could get a little tricky depending on the timing, especially VA, because VA generally takes a couple extra days. So just be aware of that, 30 days within closing. Okay. I would not ask for it though, because you're just asking the seller to pay for it, which I think is probably not wise in this environment.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of Susan Corley's special steps, and I know that Pam in the past has always suggested that we include that, but I mean, in this past year, I don't think that I haven't been including that, so.
Yeah, again, remember everything that you ask for is going to be most likely put up on some type of spreadsheet where they're going to be analyzing net costs or net receivables to the seller. So if you're asking for a $600 warranty or a termite letter or any of this kind of stuff, it's going to be factored into the math. Now, if you're going 50,000 above list price and you're asking for a termite letter, number one, that doesn't make any sense to me, but it's all a function of the total composite offer.
I've kind of been following your guidance that, keep the offer very, very clean. Don't put in, a lot of stuff and negotiate it during due diligence.
That's right.
And I think that's been working in this current environment.
Now, I also recommend a bit of a, like when you're sending the offer via email, which I always like to do. I know that's an extra step, but I downloaded it out of Command, right? and then I attached it to an offer or to an email. And then I would write in the body of the email, you know, hey, I'm working with a very well qualified buyer and my favorite lender. And I just wanted to point out a couple of highlights of our offer, like the things that are better than normally they would be. Hey, we offered double the typical earnest money, and here it is. And we cut our due diligence down to 4 days. And, you know, we did this and we offered this, and we were open to closing with your closing attorney. By the way, you know, our closing date is flexible. If that's something that's important to you, we're more than happy to discuss that, right? You're kind of giving them some context to what they would find in the blanks. Okay. I think that's really important. The issue with, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's a little gray. Is, let's say I'm the buyer's agent and I've got, obviously I'm in command and my buyer's in command, and that's how our side is signing. But in order for me to send it to the other agent, then I've got to get their email and potentially the seller's emails, which quite frankly, if somebody asked me for my seller's email, I'd tell them no, right? So I just usually took it out of the electronic service and sent them to them as a PDF and let them decide how they're going to sign it or electrically sign it.
And Bill, just as a listing agent, what I like to say is, when somebody does the courtesy of sending you that email with the highlights, make sure you still read through the contract and read the special steps. Read the special steps. There can be special steps on the temporary occupancy agreement that say, I just recently had one that said, closing attorney to hold $5,000 in escrow to be released upon agreement of all parties. And so, you know, if I hadn't read through that contract, that wasn't in the highlights that the agent sent to me, but that was an important part for my client because she needed to know that, hey, your takeaway on the day of closing is going to be $5,000 less than what we estimated. So make sure you read through the special steps that other people put in, and so on.
Great point. Thank you for adding that. Okay, we have created a, we're just going to try that. We've tried something like this in the past, and it didn't quite get the participation that we'd hoped for, but we'll try it. We'll try something one more time, which is this upcoming Monday. Luth and I are almost done with the week at a glance. I'll be sending that out to you momentarily. But on Monday, just so you know, we are going to have a appointment setting session at the Market Center in person. If you'd like, we can also open up the Zoom room so that you can, those that are not able to come into the office for whatever reason, can participate. We'll have the Zoom room open. People can just have their cameras on and their what do you call it? Their voice off, muted, and just kind of enjoy the environment of being around people that are participating in lead gen at that time. I will be here and I will be making calls as well. So if you would like to participate, if there's a list that you want to call, or you have some questions about scripts or any of that kind of stuff, we can address that between now and then, or that morning. And we just hope that, you know, whoever wants to participate can get the support and the feedback that they're looking for. We had one of our PC students left me I was just smiling ear to ear. I'm sure, Candace, I sent it to you too. You were feeling the same way, which is he's gonna, I don't want to tell the whole story because he's going to share it with us next week, but he had a lot of reluctance around getting on the phone, and a lot of reluctance, and he finally just did it. And he did it 3 days in a row, and he's added a bunch of people to his database. And the most important thing is that he is a changed man, right? His confidence level is off the charts right now, because he did it, and he's still alive, and he's not injured, and it worked, right? Candace, do you want to add anything to that? Oh my gosh. I mean,
He's so
like,
happy. I mean, he feels so good about himself, and he's loving calling people now. Something clicked for him because he just did it. And he got over, it's the most amazing transformation. So, and the other thing I'd say is, if you have never lead gen with other people. The energy is fantastic. It does something to be around people that are doing the same thing as you. So I hope you can come in. If you've got one-on-ones, you can just come in my office for 15 minutes and get right back to it. So just I hope you can make it in. It's a different environment, and it's absolutely it's fun, and it also you feel that support of the other people that are just like you.
What time did you say that would be again?
We'll go from, let's say, 9:15 to 11 o'clock. And you could call all day if you'd
It's
like.
coming Monday, Columbus Day, yes.
Oh, damn. Are we off, Candace?
I don't think so. Banks are closed, but we're not.
All right,
Okay.
well, we're gonna do it Monday just because that's the way the schedule works. Maybe this will become
Okay.
something that we do, every week or something anyway. So
If you have-
if you're able to attend, great. If you're not, that's fine too.
Are kids off? That's the more important
Kids
question.
don't, kids are out of school.
Yeah, my
Kids are out of school. Oh, okay.
They're out
So-
Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
And Tuesday?
It's fall break. Well, for Fulton County, it could be different for different
Yeah.
county.
So that's,
It's on the schedule. Let's just do it. It won't be the
Yeah, I mean,
last
I
time
could
we
be
offer.
there. I was just wondering.
Yeah. I found a really cute picture of my daughter that came up on my Google photos from year past or whatever. I'll post it a little bit later. It's her making some calls. It's really funny. All right, you guys, did you learn something today?
Yes.
Helpful
Yeah.
reminders. Thank
Hey,
you.
and I was gonna say too, if you, and I said this to you yesterday, Bill, but that the Mo Anderson's talk on the pivot shift call the other morning, if you have a chance, go watch it if you're in that group, because she gives a great script for people to make a call with. Just basically using data from your market center, to reach out to people. And it really made me think like, oh, that's a really good way to approach some people that you're not really sure how to reach out to, that you might not know so well. But she said some really good things, and it's only like 20 minutes, but it's really worth checking out on that Facebook page. It's still up there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, guys. There's just so many resources out there. And like, there's not one way to do it. Like, there's so many ways to do all the things that we have in mind to do. You ask 100 agents what their processes are, or their social media, what do they do for social media, or how do they handle this situation? You're going to get 100 different answers. So don't think that you have to do it a certain way. You're supposed to do it the way that resonates with you, right? If you don't want to put on a headset and call people that you don't know, then go find your appointment some other way. It's okay.
most important thing is to be consistent and not to give up after one time when you say, oh, that didn't work. Don't send out one set of golden letters and say that didn't work. Just refine them, tweak them, but just if that's what you committed to doing, commit to doing it until you do see success, and then you can evaluate.
Very well said. All right, anyone else want to add anything?
I just want to follow up with Ryan said about the pivot shift call in the morning. That's an awesome call. It really gets you pumped up for the day. People are on there sharing, and they always have great information.
Can you would you mind sharing, Donna, that the link or the Facebook page invite or whatever?
Yep, I sure
Hopefully-
can.
Hopefully everyone's a part of that group, and just like all Facebook groups, there's a file section, so they have all kinds of downloads and all kinds of stuff. There's just some really awesome stuff in there. By the way, I don't actually know James Shaw's complete background. I'm pretty sure he was a Bold coach before, but he was the one who basically took it upon himself right when COVID started to transform like an old kind of stale Facebook group into Pivot Shift, which now has 80-something thousand agents in it. And just because he volunteered to lead this and he did it consistently, like Candace said, he's now the director of learning for KWRI, right? So opportunity is everywhere, y'all. All right. Have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.